This continuous undulating wall is a main element of the building. And the blocks are called cobogó in Brazilian. They are designed in such a way that they allow air to go through, which is very important. But at the same time, the air has to be broken so that you don't have big currents through the building, which will then prevent certain sports to be played, like badminton or table tennis. Second is that these fish ribs shape of the blocks is attenuating the noise and reduce the sound outside. So we have used the same block also for areas of privacy like toilets, changing rooms. So all of that is there. Air goes through, but privacy is provided because of the shape.
In a world increasingly facing the challenges of climate change, with the Building Green podcast, we will dive deep into the intersection of architecture, design, urbanism, and environmental responsibility. I'm Ladina Schipf, your host. I've been an architect and building site manager for the past 10 years. During my studies at ETH in Switzerland, as well as in my working environment, I've had many touchpoints with sustainability, like many of you, I guess. I've also learned to question what I've been told, which is why I decided to go deeper into the topic and uncover what sustainability actually means. My mission is to highlight the transformative power of sustainable architecture, not just as a practice, but as a catalyst for broader societal change. Subscribe for more of our content and enjoy the show. Welcome, Tomislav, to Building Green. It's a pleasure having you on the podcast today. Tomislav, you joined Herzog De Meuron almost 20 years ago, and you've been an associate for the last 16 years. You've led diverse projects of different sizes and spatial programs all over the world, from Brazil to Barcelona to India and Switzerland. Today, we're going to focus exclusively on the sustainability performance of your project in the Brazilian favela Arena do Morro. As you've said, its remarkable energy and microclimate concept and performance remain overlooked due to its social focus. Tomislav, before we start talking about the project, could you share with me your story from your beginnings to becoming an associate at Herzog De Meuron?
Well, thanks, Ladina. Thanks for having me in the show in Building Green. Shortly, I was born in Bulgaria. I had my first master degree of architecture in the University and School of Architecture in Sofia, and after that, I had a master degree at the Graduate School of Design in Harvard, and basically from there, I moved to Switzerland and joined Herzog De Meuron in 2005, and just happy to have incredible projects and different parts of the world, different clients, different programs, different challenges. So it's a really fulfilling job and a dream come true.
That's wonderful. As I mentioned at the beginning, today we're going to focus exclusively on a specific project, one that is not typical for you would think of when talking about Herzog De Meuron. It's a project in a favela in Brazil, which is located next to Natal in the north of Brazil, and it's called Arena do Morro. So far, the project has mostly been discussed for its social impact. Today, we're going to focus on its sustainability performance. But before we go deeper into the details, can you give us an overview of the project? What were the core urbanistic and social concepts that shaped its development?
Yes, so this is, in a way, a very special project for us, for Herzog De Meuron. It's in a underprivileged area, which used to be a favela. It actually developed now, and it's better integrated into the city, but of course it remains an area with huge challenges. So in this respect, this was a unique experience for us and for me, of course. On the other hand, we approach this as with every other project, with the needed care, of needed understanding of the place. So in terms of our design process or thinking or attention to detail, this is a very, very typical design approach as every other project. So this was a process which we started in 2009, so almost 15 years ago, when we were invited to look at this area from a foundation near Basel, a Morro Foundation, who has already been working 30 years in that area, to do a small building like a sports hall to the school. For us was very interesting in northeast of Brazil. And the first thing which we actually said, and I think this is quite important for our approach to design, is that instead of starting with architectural ideas and concepts, we wanted to research the area, to study, to understand more, to meet the community and the people, and to use the opportunity to create something which is organically coming from the site. At that time, it is interesting. I was trying, preparing for this talk, to see what were our kind of main concerns or main ideas which were interesting for the office. And 15 years ago, sustainability was not on the front pages so much. This is for me very, very clear. I remember we have never thought of applying for a certain credit or to somehow measure the building in a certain way officially or to statutory authorities. But at the same time, we were always approaching architecture from a way how it is organically coming from the site. So a lot of the sustainability achievements which we have there came from extremely simple initial ideas. So how we have actually simplicity, how we use local materials, how we listen to the people, so that we provide an extremely simple building to maintain, to run, and to build. But at the same time, because many buildings are like that, a building which is used as much as possible. So we wanted to create such a program and such a brief that this structure is occupied from morning to evening, and that in itself is a very important sustainability argument and ambition and target from the beginning, the building to be used. And if I have to then very quickly fast forward to today, last month we were celebrating 10 years of the completion of the arena. What is very interesting and why it is interesting to look back at this project is that it has an extremely interesting microclimate when you're in there. We are in the equator, and when you go in, just the temperature is different. People like to be in there, and it is used from early morning to late night. For all kind of activities, not only sport, but for art, for classes. The community uses it for gatherings. So it is really something which surprised even us in how well it performs in providing energy efficiency and being used from morning to evening. So that is why for me this was an interesting case study. And in our discussion, I was rather recommending that we look specifically on one building rather than having a bigger portfolio of projects.
That makes total sense. So we can go really deep into it, into the details, and not just touch a few points. So in our conversation, I would like to scale down from overall concept towards smaller details, like in a design process, ending up discussing the microclimate of the project that you just mentioned. So let's start at the bigger scale. How crucial was the building's orientation in your design process, considering factors like sun path and prevailing winds, and what were the outcomes of these decisions?
Our starting point for this project, so a good illustration for that is the first photo, which is kind of an aerial view of the neighborhood, where one can see, and this was part of our initial approach, as in every project, to understand what are the most important natural elements of the context. So that's the first, which are the establishing factors which give us the initial starting points for the design. So apart from being just under the sun on the equator, this area, it is very close to the ocean. It is on top of dunes, a very interesting landscape where, as we called it, wet Brazil meets dry Brazil. So we are on top of sand dunes, but covered with very lush green. We have also quite an interesting topography. This dune is basically like a hill overlooking the ocean, and from this hill comes the name of the project, Arena do Morro, which means the arena on top of the hill. Which my understanding also is that in Portuguese or in Brazilian, hill means also favela, because usually the favelas were developing outside of the city on the outskirts of mountains. And the other very interesting factor which exists there is a series of high-rises, kind of high-end buildings, which are kind of creating a screen between the neighborhood, Maia Luisa, and the ocean, of course, occupying the first line of prime property, but importantly hiding not only the view to the ocean from the neighborhood, but also the circulation of air and so on. So this is a very also unfortunately typical situation of Brazil, where you have such contrast of high-end developments and underprivileged areas behind that. So these were the main pieces which we looked at on the site. The second one was kind of an existing structure. So there has already been there a sports hall. If one can look at photo number 3, so there was a structure, but as also one can see, that structure was very quickly kind of materials was stolen, it was broken, it was not taken care, and of course it does not work as a sports hall anymore. And knowing that existing structure and these bigger conditions on the area, our first design was not architectural design, but was an urban design. So we created what we called an urban vision for Maia Luisa, like a master plan, understanding what is missing in the neighborhood and what needs to be filled in, to be added. So this is the plan of that is on page number 2. This kind of colorful interventions in the neighborhood, creating the cross, almost like an archetypal start of a city, the missing cross in the neighborhood, with this transversal which we did. And then the crossing of that was the building of the arena on the place, basically replacing or rather enhancing this existing structure. So this was the start, and the concept was very simple. There is a structure, you can see this on page 4, existing kind of arches, which we just extend to cover the whole site, and we fill it with program.
Sounds more simple than it is, probably. So then going deeper into the construction of the project, the walls are mainly built out of a variety of permeable concrete blocks with vertical fins rotated in different directions. So you could play around with privacy and transparency, with direct and indirect light, as well as ventilation. These blocks are then combined together to create this continuous curved wall. Could you walk me through the building and explain how you incorporated the different variables in the different areas of the building?
Yes, the wall, this continuous undulating wall is a main element of the building. So one of the 3 main elements: the continuous floor, the continuous wall, and the continuous roof. So the wall, as for the other elements, we wanted to use as much as possible local products, local techniques, things which were already in use, but at the same time to bring something new, to rethink them, to understand how they can be done better, and ultimately to create a customized product which can be made specifically for this building. What the wall had to do, maybe on image 5 one can see one of our models of the building to understand how this undulating wall is having the whole perimeter. The blocks are again called Cobogo in Brazilian. They are designed in such a way that they allow air to go through, which is very important. But at the same time, the air has to be broken, so that you don't have kind of a big current through the building, which will then prevent certain sports to be played, like badminton or table tennis. So this was one of the first kind of parameters which we need to tailor for the building. Second is that these kind of fish ribs shape of the blocks, maybe page 11 can help one can understand how that looks like and how they're turned, is attenuating the noise. So, of course, this is a sports hall. Kids are playing the whole day, screaming, shouting. So for the neighbors, this would be quite uncomfortable. So that is why they attenuate the noise and kind of reduce the sound outside. And the last element, of course, is that they have to provide privacy, because we have used the same block also for areas of privacy like toilets, changing rooms. So all of that is there. Air goes through, but privacy is provided because of the shape. Important element is the material. We used very dry cement to form the block, worked with the university to make a special mixture which can be produced very quickly. And this was also having the thermal inertia of the mass, so that they're always kind of a little bit on the cold side, and they also provide certain insulation. They're open shape, and the air going through also invites light to go through. So this is kind of this very simple and low-tech element, which is actually providing quite an interesting performance for the entire building.
Very beautiful. So with sustainability in mind, could you share the story behind the selection of materials in general? And I'm particularly interested in how you chose the concrete blocks. You already got into that you worked with the university, but also the aluminium panels for the roof, for their durability and minimal waste.
Yes, so the roof is another element which started from what is the practice on site. We went through many buildings, studied how they perform, and aluminium was one of the materials of choice. It was available on site. The difference which we did, so we also kind of introduced something new in this very common technology there, was that we did not use one sheet of metal, but we made a sandwich. So we had insulation in between them. So under the sun, the upper part takes a lot of heat, but the lower part, because of the insulation of around 50 millimeters, is always cold. So the roof is not creating radiant heat. Maybe on page 13 one can see how the roof is being tested. And the other element which we introduced in the roof is that we opened the roof. The same way the blocks are having these blades, allowing wind to go through and light, the same way we did it, but in the different direction for the roof, so that we could protect, of course, the building from rain, but we allow hot air to come up and exits through the blades of the roof, and also natural light to come in the building, reflected through the roof. And if you go to page 14, there is an interesting kind of effect. It's one of the first days of the building when one can see quite a pleasant and good natural light in the building, which of course is very important for the for playing of sports and use of the building. So these kind of measures, with the last one being the floor, so the third element of the building, a continuous floor made of terrazzo, also a local technique, which unfortunately was on its way of disappearing because of the artisan work needed, but we found a person who can do that. It creates a continuous surface of the playground, of the seats, of the toilet walls, which is making the maintenance, the cleaning quite easy, and it was the main argument also for that. So all these three elements coming together, they play together and they create this quite incredible microclimate in the building. So it's very pleasant to be in there without use of any fan coil units or any equipment to create conditioning. So it's a fully naturally ventilated building. A clear example where on a quite harsh climate like the equator, we have had there gatherings and events with people with suits and t-shirts and shirts. So it was again, without the climate control, basically you never have that. You never have that in the area. So this was a big experiment for this, which we're happy to say that it works. It works quite well. So easy to maintain, virtually no electricity spending, and at the same time a space which can gather 400, 500, 600 people in a nice evening event.
So not even the roof panels are electrified?
No, not at all. Not at all. Not at all. It's a very, very simple. It's all radiating in a way, like allowing air to go through, but always filtering so that it becomes a soft movement of air. It's close to the ocean, so it goes through. It was an interesting question when we talk about sustainability and how we design a sustainable building. If we look at what we do today, we actually use an enormous amount of software and science behind studying and proving how building or materials will perform, calculating the life cycle of the building and so on. So back in time, we were also, I remember, with an engineering studio, we did a test. How will be the light of the building? So they used a special software. So the main question was, would we need artificial lighting so that one can play sport during the day? And the software came back and said, artificial light all the time. This building has no window, so it is dark inside. You know, the calculation was really, really bad. And we said, oh my God, so what did we do now? You know, like we closed the building and we have to have lights on all the time or what? And then we took a risk with the client. We said, okay, we think this is not like that. The sun will go in. The software does not prove that. And if needed, on day 2, we will install more lamps if it's really so dark. But I mean, the image behind me, which I posted exactly for this talk, is from one of the opening events. So the light was beautiful, and there is even one moment in the day around 4:15 in the afternoon where the sun goes low, and for around 10 minutes there are sun rays going through the building. You know, like it makes everything into stripes of all directions, stripes of light, and then this is like a special event during the day. You know, like people go in just to see that event. But outside of that, the building has really beautiful light. You know, you need the sunset to turn on the lights when something different happens. Maybe you can show image number 17, which is one of the twilight or dark darkness views of the building. Because of the open walls and the open roof, the light from inside starts to glow outside. So it creates a more safe area, quite important, for the evening, and also becomes like a beacon for the whole neighborhood, and it's visible from far away from the city. The building is next to the Farol, the historical Farol there, so a lighthouse, and these two pieces somehow work together to create a light fixture.
That's so wonderful how, like, with the same element of these open walls, you can solve two problems at once, or many more, and create a really nice atmosphere during the day and during night. It's beautiful. Did you implement any other natural building materials, or just the three main ones?
These are the three main ones because we just wanted to simplify the structure, and we have on some of the sliding doors which close one of the multi-purpose rooms which are there. We used timber very selectively, so the moment you touch the building, it is basically a warm timber, which is kind of completing the palette of materials for the building. But that is only in very, very selected areas.
And are you thinking, because you mentioned before you were there after the 10 years celebration, or it has happened now, are you considering putting solar panels on the roof, or is that not a topic at all because the building doesn't need that much energy and the area as well now?
Very interesting question. Of course, like solar panel is like the technology of choice, especially for areas of such abundant, like sunlight throughout the year. And solar panels were on our technologies or materials to consider also back in time. We didn't use them for, I would say a very specific reason. First, the building had no basically literally no consumption of electricity, just a few bulbs in the evening. But second, of course, one would say today, but you can produce electricity and then you sell it back to the grid, obviously, but that did not exist back in time. There was no system, even for the foreseeable future, for that area to use it in such way, which we can see how things have evolved, for like 10 or 15 years. So that was the reason not to have photovoltaics back on that. And today it is not very easy to retrofit photovoltaics. That would have been possible, but because of the weight, so they're heavy glass elements, so you have to also do certain redesign of the structure of the roof, which is not on the in the plans currently. But we are maybe doing another project across the street from the arena. There is a good possibility to do something, and there we will definitely rethink the topic of renewable energy, which is in such abundance there.
And maybe once you finish the second project, it will be like in 10 years, and then the technology is already that advanced that it's not heavy anymore.
Absolutely. No, there is already, of course, if we talk about photovoltaics, of course, there are already products which are not based on glass. They are very lightweight, but of course, they are also very expensive. They are very experimental. So here, we wanted always to be on the sure side, to know that something works, that it is robust, that it is simple. So, it takes time also to start implementing such high-end technologies.
Yeah, and if it already works really well, like the microclimate without a lot of technology, that's even better. So often the process of building can be as impactful as the building itself. Could you delve into the sustainable practices employed during the construction of Arena do Morro? I'm especially interested in how the concrete blocks and the walls were built and the roof construction.
One of the most important considerations in selecting materials, of course, is durability. It's the energy needed to be produced, but also that you have labor who is capable to doing that on site. That we don't need to bring a workforce from far away, which brings its own complications and negative impact on the sustainability of a building. So we have worked with local companies. They have used local people as much as possible. We of course had to adapt our design, our details, our thinking of interfaces between elements, of what is possible, how they can do. And I would say this has been an extremely rewarding process because we wanted to learn. So this is part of our ethos, that we want to understand how things are done and to use this in a creative way. But also, we were very lucky to have a local team who wanted to learn and experiment with us. So this was a very mutually beneficial process where we were understanding how they do and how we would work. As I said, in almost all elements, the floor, the walls, the roof of the building, we were using local techniques and materials, but also we were introducing some innovative element into that. So that innovative element was requiring tests. It was requiring prototypes. So together with the construction company, I mentioned also the university, with the local team, we were producing mock-ups and pieces of the buildings up front. We were testing them so that all kind of waste or like complexities of building something was tested in a very low quantity, where we can easily demolish or easily change or easily learn before the whole building was built. Again, this is not a big building. It is around 2,000 square meter area, but the process is very important for that, because we were also the process of testing, experimenting, simplifying before going to build, because we always were aware that this building will be somehow becoming like a sample, like an example of how things are built. It is now in the textbooks in the university there, so there is always students coming in and see how it is built. So we were always understanding that this building can do even more to be like a learning tool, experimental tool, social element, part of the school, of course. That's its main program. And in this way, I think the design process, the understanding of sustainability, the reducing of waste, the testing, the using of local people, minimizing all kind of logistics and transporting were also key at defining well the building looks like, the building feels like. And of course, when we talk about sustainability, we cannot forget that a large part of sustainability is its social aspect. So how the building is liked or used or occupied during the day. And important element of the design process was the engagement with the community. So that again, so they participate not only in the building of the building, not only in maintaining the building, taking care of it, but also in defining what they want to have in. So when it was the moment to say, okay, this is a sports hall, but can it do something more? There will be this structure here. So there was a very interesting and intense discussion with the people from the neighborhood, where they're saying, okay, we can have also art classes, we can have dance classes, we can have community meetings, we can have a part of the church activities to happen in there. They can work with tourist agencies. This was before the World Cup in Brazil, so there was intent also that to be like a fan zone, and so on and so on. So it was almost endless. So the result is reflecting these discussions and exchanges with the community, which helped to create the building for them and by them. So they're using it now. They're taking care of it. The building after 10 years is in immaculate shape. There is no graffiti. It's really something which shows that people have a respect for the building, and this is also something I think not only specific for a favela or a poor neighborhood, but for any neighborhood, where people understand this is their building, they're using it, they're taking care of it, and then that thing is turning into a cycle, so that you can intensify your use in care, and you teach also the children how to take care of things.
A few of you might know that I recently opened my own architecture studio, and I just started with the podcast. I'm very excited to build a platform where I connect with inspiring people to learn along the way and share these learnings with you. So if any little thing has inspired you, or if you learned anything new, I'd appreciate if you could rate the show or share my content on social media, Spotify or YouTube, or wherever you listen to it. And if you think there are any touch points between you and me, I'd be super happy to connect with you. Feel free to reach out on any platform. Funnily, I did an exchange semester in Sao Paulo at FAO with Angelo Bucci, and in that semester we had to plan a cultural center for one of the, I think, 20 favelas in Sao Paulo. So we had to choose one favela and create a cultural center there. And I loved the exercise of we then started analyzing the different cultural centers there are. And I love that it's such an important topic there. Even though it's an informal urbanistic structure, culture is really important to bring people together and to show them to value their spaces. And I really like that. You said before that all the studies you made during the building process were also to set some kind of blueprint. Have you seen projects that took Arena do Morro as a reference?
Yes. So this is quite an interesting development, because I kind of kept following the project through the years, engaged with the community, visited a few times after the submission, and the impact of the project was quite substantial. So it has been presented to the Habitat in United Nations. It has been very well known throughout Brazil, and we were asked a few times to be able to explain how actually we did this project, who were the parties involved, what was specific for that, so that it becomes a model. So we are beyond that theoretical part. Already they are projects which are trying to understand how such program, like a sports hall next to a school, can help kids be engaged. That is the main part. So as a program, as a building type, this is a very promising piece. Before I go to the implementation as model, something which is very important for that implementation of model, of course, is the client. So the client for this building is the social center in Maia Luisa, supported by Ameropa Foundation from Basel, from Binningen here in Switzerland. And after 30 years of work, the arena was somehow materializing the progress of the community in their work fight for survival. And this was, they're going into the stage of integration of the community into the city. So this is a major and important step. So one that became visible as a successful element, not only in terms of getting rid of the stigma of the address of living in Maya Luisa, of living in a favela, that the city understands this is an integrated neighborhood into the broader urban area. The next quite important piece is that with that integration, the client was able to define what are the steps, and they were acknowledged as an entity, the social center and the Meropa Foundation, from the federal government and from the state government as people to advise and lead other projects. So there is now this big development program in Brazil called Novo PAC. So part of that is fund for social development, and this amazing client, social center Maya Luisa, is responsible for 15 further projects to implement their knowledge and know-how, so to say, within Natal, in the interior of the state, and with the funds of this federal program to develop 15 further areas. And another project from the second half of last year was a very similar sports hall and social center in another favela of Natal. There was a competition. I was in the jury, and this project was definitely one of the the milestone references for how to approach these areas. So I hope also that one, a 16th project, may be a successful development and follow of the arena.
But are they using the arena as a reference only in social and urbanistic terms, or also in terms of the building construction to make it a permeable, fully natural conditioned building?
Yes, well, definitely the impact of the natural conditions, because if you just drive and go to other places in Natal where you have similar buildings, even just by having a simple roof, what everybody has, of a single aluminium sheet, it gets so hot. That sheet gets so hot from the sun that during the day you just cannot use the space. It is really you're like in an oven. And only that simple thing to understand how you can do it differently within the same geometry and typology is already making a huge difference. And the other piece, of course, which is quite interesting, is we met a lot of architects, young architects there, who are quite enthusiastic about the quality of architecture. They saw that you can have quality architecture also in a favela or in a poor neighborhood. There is no stigma about that. And they also understand the needs of such buildings for such neighborhoods, the care you need to have. And then, of course, the success of that. So this is very interesting, that you see the quality is addressed in buildings which before had never had that attention. And to that, we should, of course, add the key agenda today of sustainable building. We architects and construction industry are responsible for huge amount of the consumed energy during construction, during life cycle. So that is now and for very good reason, much more strict, much more demanding in the agenda for the architects than what we had 15 years ago. But it is good that even back then, without such formal requirements, so to say, we could achieve something which is valid in the very strict regulations today.
Yeah, it's wonderful touching its energy efficiency. I mean, these neighborhoods already have problems getting enough energy for the housing spaces. So it's wonderful how you managed to create a public space that is almost 100% energy efficient. Would it make sense, because the housing in the favelas are quite similar often, like they have brick walls and like an aluminium roof? Are there, like in a simplified way, elements that they could take over into the housing construction methods?
Yes, hopefully, like the simplest thing is insulation. This is not only for Brazil or for equatorial areas or tropical areas. This is everywhere. We know this in Europe. Like you do a sensible insulation, you increase the performance of the building. So I think even if they take this one piece of knowledge and technology, ultimately, that will help a lot. What is interesting about the neighborhood within this master plan, which we created, this vision for my Luisa, there were like 11 or 12 proposed projects, and one of them, if you open page 2 or image 2 at the plan, there is a big green line going through the entire neighborhood. So that is what we call the green street. So this was our proposal, our idea to say, okay, just increase the green, plant trees in the neighborhood. And what is interesting is that this idea took over. So the municipality took this idea. They started doing that. They did not only plant trees, but also repaired the sidewalks, did a bit of cover for the streets, so they made them accessible for people with like low mobility. And when this process was triggered, and the neighborhood saw that there is certain care for the urban environment, the green street or the greening of the neighborhood was taken over by the neighborhood itself. So people started to create plans, bring them out, plant them. On image 16 is some of the effect of that. We are hoping that the city will continue that project, because it is, of course, it's a long street. But this was another impact of the microclimate, which is also related to public space. The street, the houses, the apartments there are so small, people spend their time outside most of the time. So when you have a bit of green and shadow and the breeze which you have to the ocean, this is in a way a different interpretation of the same idea of what we have in the arena.
Cost is often a critical factor in sustainable architecture, especially in these kind of contexts. Can you share how you managed the budget for Arena do Morro, particularly in terms of balancing financial constraints with the sustainability goals of the project?
Cost has been, of course, kind of a key parameter in that project, and we, of course, were looking at the cost in a more holistic way. Not only the direct investment, which will go into building this building, but how it will work. That a key element here was the multifunctionality of the building. We could bring in a lot of other activities which could be built with virtually the same cost, and this made the building actually quite efficient and very heavily used. So in that respect, the efficiency was definitely affecting an efficiency of the cost. On the other side, it is very clear that this building is more expensive, per square meter or per cubic meter than its peers in Natal. If you look at the typical sports hall in a school, they are done much simpler. Many times they don't have walls and a very simple roof on top. So obviously the cost is smaller. But then they are not used, or they use very in a very short period of times, and this brings the relativity of cost. The same way as relativity of efficiency or relativity of investment, because this building had a higher cost because of all these elements, but they perform in such a good way that ultimately the use of the building is at a very low cost. I don't know whether I explained this very clear, but somehow we think and we judge now that this investment was worth, which is ultimately the end result, even if it is, of course, more expensive than reference projects we saw around Natal.
Mm-hmm. But there's no point in making an investment if nobody uses it in the end.
Exactly. That is quite important. And of course, when we talk about cost, it is not only about the construction, but it is the running of the building. So it has again very little energy bill, which is quite good. It is easy to clean, and so the running costs of the building are also, for what this building is doing, they are very low.
I want to read an extract from a text from Herzog De Meuron for the next question. So it says, furthermore, sustainability is not only a technical and economic challenge, but also a cultural one. Since modern times, humans increasingly understood nature and civilization as opposites. We need a new equilibrium in society and in architecture. Can you elaborate on how the project implements that idea?
I think it's a very easy question. For this building, the way it is, I think if we take the term or the target equilibrium, this building definitely brings a certain balance in the neighborhood. In the master plan, when we were seeing what we can add to the neighborhood, we had a very simple concept. Let's see what is missing in the neighborhood, and we add that. So what was missing was a sports hall, what was missing a recreational area, what was missing a big gathering space for the community. So we just added that. And the building, by just fulfilling that program, is already completely changing the neighborhood. We understood that not only by kind of subjectively judging the space or the temperature or the microclimate, but also objectively by drastic reduction of levels of homicides in the neighborhood. Like these are areas of high crime activities, and usually it is normal to have a much higher criminality rates in such areas. And we actually understood and was measured statistically that since the arena is there, since the neighborhood is meeting together, since everybody has this place to go and take care of, actually the hostility, the homicides levels plunged, as opposed to different areas in Brazil and in Natal. So this neighborhood, which is usually on the worst case scenario of crime, is because of public space, of used public space, is changing that. And the use of public space is definitely related to the restored balance in the neighborhood, or created balance by public space. And the use of public space is because it is pleasant to use, it is beautiful to look at and experience, and also it is taken care to be maintained well.
That's wonderful learning, let's say, from the whole building process and project development. That's wonderful. So architecture is for people, after all. In what ways were the residents of Maria Luisa involved during the design phase, and how did their engagement shape the final outcome?
As I mentioned, we had a lot of engagement with the neighborhood, and that was kind of an organic development of already existing relationships between the social center, between a very broad international network of solidarity, where they were discussing with the neighborhood. They had already created Centro Socio and Amerobo Foundation, a house for the elderly, a school, a music school. They're supporting the church. So this is this kind of dialogue was just easily taken and organically by us. And at Herzog De Meuron, we are about dialogue with client, with community, with the site, so that we can have a specific and tailored response. So with the neighborhood, we had input on what this building should have in, what activities it should allow, what kind of shape it can be. We have discussed all of them. We have presented different options. We have heard them after that. Like, can we change? Can we explore something else? They were part of the construction, and of course, most importantly, they are part of the running of the building. It is their building. They're inhabiting. Their kids are in there. The neighborhood is there. So this is how this becomes an epicenter of their activity, of their attention, and of their care.
So we have talked a lot about a building that was built 10 years ago and a very simple structure in a way. You managed to create a simple structure out of a complex problem. And nowadays, how is Herzog De Meuron approaching sustainability aspects in more complex buildings?
As I mentioned, the question of climate environment is key. We know that, and we as architects and professionals have to always be or try to be on the front end also of these questions, to understand what are the trends, what are the tools to deal with this, what are the materials to respond, and the projects are getting more and more demanding in terms of how we can perform. So it is not anymore just a question of ethos or individual decision. Many aspects are already statutory required, of performance of the buildings, of materials to be used. So there is also the element where we need to respond in a design way to already given conditions in terms of how much glass one building can have, how much energy it should use as proportion to their neighborhood, how much renewable energy it should use. So this is I would say series of questions which are not only affecting our design work, but they are even starting at Herzog De Meuron before that, in the process of selecting and understanding which project we want to work on, to see, do we have a client, do we have a condition where we can actually push the sustainability agenda forward. Do we have a partner on the other side who can take the journey with us, because this many times requires more effort, many times requires more investment. So the balancing of these things is not a simple question. But I would say with starting to first exchanges with a potential client of their ambition for sustainability is probably already the first point. And internally we have been creating a quite substantial knowledge base of what is sustainability, of what is energy, what is materiality on different areas. Also, how we can approach that. It is not the same question everywhere in the world. It's specific as every other every other part. So we are creating this kind of internal knowledge, which is then applied or asked for in every concrete project, so that we can have almost like extreme examples where we have a client which asks for us to do the building with the smallest possible carbon footprint. That became already a design question.
Are you planning on creating like a book at some point with all these internal researches that you're doing?
I don't know whether we have that in the plan. What I would know is that when we are approaching the topic of sustainability, we are approaching it in a creative way, and we want to understand how, as designers, we can contribute to a development of certain topic. Let's say, for example, if we take the topic of as we discussed, photovoltaics, an element which is rightfully used in many areas, even in the north hemisphere, in Europe here, where you don't have much of sun many times, but you want to have it. And then it becomes a question, what is a photovoltaic? How does it? Is it only you go to the shop and you buy a certain square meters, or you can actually think of how it looks like, how it affects the city, how it is in a building which is in a virgin landscape, and you want this roof, let's say, or these surfaces to be merging more with the colors, with the reflectivity, with kind of something different from the usual industrial look of let's say a photovoltaic surface. So this is interesting for us, and probably instead of writing a book about photovoltaics theory, we can just show in a few projects how we have creatively approached that, how it looks like, what were the questions we were facing, how we were testing it, how we worked with the industry to experiment, to do a product, and then how it looks in a building, in the city.
It's wonderful to hear that such a big architecture office with more resources than other probably puts so much into that topic. It's a bit of a responsibility as well, but I don't know if every big architecture office puts so much into bringing an important topic forward. So that's nice to hear. Tomislav, thank you so much for your insight. It has been very interesting. If our listeners want to see more of your work, where can they find you?
Well, they can find me on the website of Herzog De Meuron. If they Google my name, Tomislav, it will come down with all the projects I have been there working for almost 20 years.
Great, then I will share the link. Thank you very much, Tomislav.
Thank you, Adina. Thank you, it was a pleasure.
A huge thank you for listening. Make sure you subscribe to the show wherever you listen to the podcast to support me and so you don't miss an episode. And while you're there, I'd also be so grateful if you could rate and review us. If you have any guest suggestions or any feedback, you can find me on the socials at @LadinaShipf. Thanks.